Kids are so much
Santa.
fun.
Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the May 7th Post Falls City Council meeting. Shannon, please note that all council members are present with the exception of Councilor Ziegler, who is excused tonight. And we have no ceremonies, announcements, or appointments on the agenda, but I'm going to add one, and I want to be the first to, at a public meeting, congratulate our new city engineer, Robert Paulus, with Bill Melvin's retirement, Rob being promoted to city engineer. Rob, I'm very happy for you. You've served, I think, as I read, 23 years with the city, and your contributions have been significant, well-deserved, and I congratulate you on the promotion. Amendments to the agenda tonight.
We have none tonight, sir.
Are there any declarations of conflict or ex parte contacts or site visits?
On the public hearing tonight, that subject property is in the entrance to the neighborhood I live in. My wife frequents the coffee stand, but I don't know if that disqualifies me or not, but I drive by it all the time.
As long as you can still fairly judge it and it doesn't influence your position, that's fine.
I believe so.
And we prefer to not have you close your eyes when you drive by it. So, just saying. Thanks, Joe. Will you please present the consent calendar?
Item A is minutes from the April 11th, 2024 City Council workshop. Item B is minutes from the April 16th, 2024 City Council meeting. Item C is payables April 9th through April 29th, 2024. Item D is Lumen phone and internet contract. Item E is updated Appendix X for, I guess, Appendix 10 for the Haycrop Commercial Park, AKA Jacqueline Ranch Construction Improvement Agreement. Item F is intergovernmental fee waiver agreement with Kootenai County Fire and Rescue. Item G is purchase of a John Deere wide area mower for the Parks Division. Item H is Foxtail 10th Edition Subdivision Construction Improvement Agreement. Item I is Jacqueline Ranch, AKA Haycrop Commercial Park Subdivision Plat Application. Item J is Legion Park Annexation Reasoned Decision ANNX-23-7. And item K is Archie Annexation Reasoned Decision ANNX-23-4.
Any questions on the consent calendar? Joe?
I do have a question. Item F, the intergovernmental fee waiver. I guess the question doesn't really matter that much because we all pay taxes in both districts, but in terms of the coffers of each taxing district, is there roughly an equivalent number of inspections that the fire department does for the city for fees they would waive versus the number of inspections that we do for the fire department that we would waive? Or
So I didn't draft the memo, but I believe we looked at that and they did sort of come out to be a basic wash, so from my understanding.
that's kind of what I thought on the top of my head too, because there's not a lot of projects back and forth. But
Yeah, and there's also the KCFR does do some inspections for us, and so they would be waiving those fees.
yeah, I guess, and off the top of your head, it's fine. I just thought if some weird thing is that we're doing 100 inspections a year for them and they're doing one for us, then that's not really. But again, we pay taxes in both districts anyway, so I was just curious. Thank you.
Any questions?
That I would move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second. Motion second. Further discussion. Shannon, please take the roll.
Shove.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Stigleader. Aye. Westland.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda tonight is public hearings. We do have one, our next venture zone change. With that, I'll open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, City Council members. Ethan Porter, one of the planners here with the city, presenting our next venture zone change, ZC-23-4. So the applicant who's here tonight, Scott MacArthur of MacArthur Engineering, he, on behalf of the owner, Stan Groves, our next venture LLC, they're requesting that City Council approve a rezone of approximately 3.1 acres of industrial to community commercial services. So looking at the project location attached there in red, it's south of Celtice Way, just north of the railroad tracks, and then it is west of Cedar Street. It's on that southwest corner of Cedar and Celtice. There you can see, and then Interstate 90 is obviously further north, labeled there. So That kind of gives you the contextual area of kind of where that subject site is. It's made up of 2 properties, basically one being the coffee stand, as Councilmember Malloy mentioned. The other is vacant, and so together they're pretty underutilized, underdeveloped at this point in time. Physical characteristics on the site, just to note that it's over the Ratcham Prairie Aquifer. Nothing significant there on site that have been noticed or mentioned. And then the wastewater and the water provider would be the city of Post Falls for this area. So looking at the zoning, they're hatched in black. Again, the red's going to be community commercial services, which is just north across Celtice Way. The gray is going to be industrial, which you see kind of along Celtice with a mix of commercial and industrial as well. The yellow is going to be single-family residential. You have the dark orange being R3 multifamily, and then the kind of mustardy orange more so is going to be the medium density R2. So kind of looking at that, it is in the industrial zone, as mentioned. And then we kind of take a look at that future land use designation on the staff side to kind of look at what it's designated for future use. And per the future land use map, it is commercial. So all the red there on that left side map is going to be commercial. The gray is going to be industrial. And then you have some lighter yellow, single family. And then you have the medium density, which is lighter orange. And then the high density residential being that kind of darker orange there. So there you can kind of see the makeup of what the future land use designates this area, that corridor along Celtice in this area, primarily commercial right along Celtice Way, and industrial as well on that north side. The Maplewood focus area, basically the subject site falls within the Maplewood focus area, and so I'll go in a little more detail on the next slide, but I wanted to point that out that in the comprehensive plan we look at the focus area as well to kind of what is that guiding document show or explain about that subject site and that location, kind of what's projected there potentially for the future. So looking more at that kind of compatibility at a holistic view, kind of mention that future land use designation of commercial. You can see there on the bottom left of the slide, there's CCS is bolded and underlined, so they're requesting the CCS zoning, and it is an implementing zoning district for the future land use designation of commercial. Which then we look at that focus area like I mentioned, and the Maplewood focus area looks at promoting that infill development, looks for opportunities to beautify and add gateway signage along that Celtice corridor, also encouraging interconnected development, including pedestrian access, multimodal pathways and trails and such like that. So with kind of looking at that as far as your future use, kind of what's to come, what's planned for that per the comprehensive plan, we kind of look at our goals and policies next, which goal number 6 would be maintain and improve Post Falls transportation network on pace and in concert with need and plan objectives. And so kind of supporting that would be policy 8 and 26 outlined there on the right-hand side. And so encouraging compatible infill development, and then the redevelopment of vacant and underutilized properties within city limits. And then policy 26 looks at maintaining and improving the continuity of sidewalk, trails, bicycle paths in Post Falls. So kind of how we get from the future land use map to the focus area to the goals and the policies supporting that kind of goes the opposite way too, where we kind of look at these goals and policies. You know, as I mentioned, these 2 lots are pretty underdeveloped and underutilized, as well as development would require them to put in frontage improvements, including sidewalks and a potential trail, and looking at kind of some of that connection for pedestrian pathways. And so that kind of aligns there with the goal following that focus area and that future land use designation. So kind of tying it all together kind of shows that pathway on how you look at the land use map, you look at the focus area, and then you look at the goals and policies that are potentially relevant for the proposal. And so kind of keeping the future land use designation in mind in the focus area, goal number 7 looks at plan for and establish types and quantities of land uses in Post Falls supporting community needs and city's long-term sustainability. So with this goal, kind of look at some of the policies, and policy 86 stood out. There's going to be more in the staff report, but kind of look at looking at 86, kind of highlighting and supporting that goal 7 would be kind of the local business community and enhancing, sustain, and diversify the local economic base by that following list there, which includes helping retain, promote, and expand existing businesses and industry, and supporting innovative entrepreneurial enterprises, supporting opportunities related to business campus and mixed-use models, coordinating provisions of workforce housing, and attracting new businesses in clean industry. So kind of some of that policy 86 would kind of be relevant to support goal 7, looking at those focus areas, because you have the Maplewood focus area kind of promoting that infill development, and attracting some new business potentially if it were CCS. It is kind of a tight spot for industrial, not that it's not doable, but it does kind of restrict some of those uses potentially because their larger sites are more accommodating for industrial. But this one being so thin and kind of awkwardly shaped, CCS would potentially incentivize some further development, kind of helping out with that future land use in the focus area as well. So to give kind of some context in the surrounding area, we have some in the northwest corner there of the map, some duplex sites, the Ross Point Estates, as well as Maplewood Villas. Kind of on the bottom there, we have the Pineville Estates subdivision, single family, it's within the county. Just north of that, we have mobile homes, park within the county as well. Then we have a vacant R3 right along Pinion Park to the west. Further north from Pinion Park, that vacant R3, across Celtice Way, we have a single-family home there. It's a little triangle piece just north of Celtice. And then moving east, you have our next venture site there. And then you have the Archie annexation, which was approved as community commercial services as they annex in. I believe it was just shy of 14 acres total. So that'll be a CCS designation, or zoning district there. And then you have the Riverside Harbor subdivision, which is single family within the city limits. It's not mentioned there, but on that northwest corner of that Riverside Harbor, I did notice I forgot to include some kind of multifamily there. It's I believe, and I could be wrong, but it possibly is a assisted living center right there on Cedar, but
It is.
okay, thank you. Yeah, I was like, I think I recall that, but kind of looking more at that intersection too, kind of as a whole context, there's a lot going on as far as everything else being commercial on that corridor and kind of what's not kind of labeled. But we do see through the Archie annexation, the anticipated road alignment and signal light update with their kind of annexation into it and development. So that's potentially to come as well, as staff commented on. Looking a little bit further at what is around, we do have some nearby bus routes and bus stops. So to the west, approximately 885 feet, there's a bus stop. And then to the east, along Celtice, 255 feet, we do have some bus stops there. It's on the CityLink bus route. So that does provide another mode of transportation for anyone looking at doing business here or in the area in itself, that they don't want to drive, they would be able to use the CityLink bus route. Part of staff process, we basically notify the agencies. We send it out, let them know this project is moving forward in the public hearing process, and basically what we receive back from the agencies, we put into the staff report, as you guys probably have seen, to kind of look at if there's any impacts or issues that were brought up by those jurisdictions. And so the comments coming back from them, Post Falls School District, they remain neutral. Cooney County Fire and Rescue, they reserve their comments for the permitting process. Yellowstone Pipeline had no comment, as well as Department of Environmental Quality. So not much coming back. So we look at primarily review criteria 3 for that, as part of being the demonstrable adverse impact upon those delivery services by any political subdivision, providing public services within the city. So nothing demonstrable as far as an adverse impact has come through and been notified to us through our outreach for that. But the review criteria, you can see that first one discussing that future land use map and focus area, which I talked about, kind of making sure they're consistent with those. Review criteria 2 looks at that proposed zoning district being that CCS, make sure it's consistent with the goals and policies contained in the currently adopted Post Falls Comprehensive Plan, and making sure it's relevant. So with that being said, I will take any questions you have for staff.
Questions for Ethan at this point? Go ahead, Joe.
This might be too broad of a question, but what commercial uses are permissible in CCS that are not permissible in industrial?
That is pretty broad. We have a land use table that is very lengthy and in-depth. Off the top of my head, I couldn't answer that. I don't have it memorized, but there's a lot of industrial does usually have, or it is kind of more outright permitted uses than commercial. So there are some restrictions. A lot of it deals with manufacturing. So like industrial uses for large manufacturing, large distribution facilities are pretty much not going to be permitted in commercial. But again, without having the land use table in front of me, it's really difficult to kind of decipher that.
Yeah, and my apologies.
Oh, you're good.
I'll press it a bit. So it's pretty obvious what's, there's things in industrial that aren't permissible in CCS.
Mm-hmm.
Heavy industrial that operates 24/7, noise, pollution, all that sort of stuff. There's a coffee stand on that property now, so coffee stands are allowed. So I'm assuming office buildings are allowed, retail
Correct.
is allowed.
Yep.
Gas stations allowed.
Correct.
Grocery is allowed.
Mhm.
All those things.
Yep. General retail, offices, businesses, that the kind of standard business, I guess, you see for like outlet malls and such would be permitted.
So for somebody looking for a commercial development on that property, one of the few things that they would be restricted against in industrial would be residential, correct?
Correct. Yeah, residential is not permitted outright industrial, and so that's, but within the community commercial services, residential, usually you can only get a special use permit for residential uses.
Unless residential is on the second floor of,
Cool. We do have the mixed use. Within mixed use, vertical mixed use standards in our code does permit outright for CCS to be kind of main floor as some office retail, and then you can have some residential units on the top. And so that is outright permitted within the CCS zone, but not industrial.
thank you.
Yep.
If I remember correctly, one of the key differences between industrial and CCS is setbacks. That CCS, I believe, has no setbacks.
Correct, yes.
Industrial does.
So it does provide them a little bit more
Yeah.
incentive to.
So when you have a long,
Yep.
skinny property, if you have a setback on both sides, that really limits your build area by a lot. And when you have a property, especially this one, that's got road frontage on one side and it's got a railroad track on the south, there's really no need for the setbacks. So I think that would be a motivation, aside from residential, for moving from industrial to CCS, to be able to build over more of the area.
The parking doesn't count against a setback, does it?
No, it's just to the building.
Right.
So parking can be within setback, yeah.
Any comments from Ethan? Proponent wish to speak? And I should mention before, and I did mention previously, if anyone wishing to testify, please turn your documents into our clerk, and we will let you speak. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. Honorable Mayor, City Council, Scott MacArthur, MacArthur Engineering, here on behalf of our next venture. Try not to reiterate everything Mr. Porter had to say tonight, but kind of outline the key topics, I think. The three criteria required for this zone change are what we're trying to present to you tonight. Basically, does it meet the intent of the city through the comprehensive plans, the future land use map, and the goals and policies? Does it put a demonstrable impact, negative impact on the city? And I can tell you that it's zoned or it should be commercial in the future land use map. It is commercial in the future land use map. There is no demonstrable impact to the city, and we, as Mr. Porter mentioned, meet all the goals and policies that are required for this zone change. Mr. Malloy, don't worry, we're still going to have coffee on the site. We're going to figure that one out.
My wife
So,
will
yeah.
be very happy about
Just
that.
trying to make sure it's a good night for you when you get home. So, while residential use is permitted through the mixed use zone, it's not our intent to develop the property with any residential uses. Our clients are asking, as Mr. Westland said, for this zone change strictly for the setbacks. It is a unique piece of property. It's long and skinny. With the impacts of the right-of-way, the dedications that were required to make the frontage improvements, it even more so impacts that area. So we've discussed future development plans with the city staff. They've looked at infrastructure, they've looked at transportation, and I believe, just from the staff report, that there's no question, comments, concerns about that traffic, sewer, water, which are all available in the public right-of-way. So short of reiterating again what Mr. Porter had to say, I think the first thing I should do is thank Mr. Paulus. I've been working with him my entire career as the assistant city engineer, so congratulations again, too, on that. I forgot to do that when I started in my notes. That's why I make notes. But other than that, it is a unique piece of property. We are looking for the CCS zoning strictly for the setbacks and our proposed commercial development that will serve the community in this area. It's an underutilized portion of the town. Services are not readily available nearby, and that's my client's intent, is to develop a piece of property that has the commercial services to serve those neighboring residential properties. So I'll stand for questions.
Question, Mr. MacArthur.
Can you give us some details about what you plan to build there?
Yeah, I can go into that. Just standard community commercial services. There's
Like a nail salon or a mini mart or?
I can't tell what's going to go in there. We'll
Okay.
provide opportunities for those services.
Okay.
We do have an opportunity to continue coffee use on the property. The development plans haven't been submitted to the city, so those routes and maneuverability, loading zones, parking, all that will be addressed with the site plan review.
Would you be open to a development agreement that disallows any type of residential, including with a special use permit?
I believe my clients would, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do you say hair salon?
Yeah.
That's discriminatory.
Nails.
Just one nails,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, nail
That's
salon.
right.
You have
I was
nails?
told last night that my wife said I should cut my hair like the mayor, but I don't know, so.
I just, if Councilor
quicker than doing
said hair salon, then I said, wait a minute. Anyway, I'm joking. Okay, if that's it, no questions at this point? Good.
Yeah. Thank you.
I was just sticking up for at least two other guys up here, so. We do have one wishing to speak, neutral, Megan Rounds. Please come forward, name for the record, and we'll give you the timer. Come on up. Yep.
I appreciate you letting me speak. So I live in Riverside Harbor, and there's a group of us that came.
Excuse me, name for the record.
Oh, Megan Rounds.
Thank you.
Thank you. I live in Riverside Harbor. There's a group of us that came at the planning and zoning time of it, and we are concerned because they can put residential above this. We're also concerned because at that Cedar and Celtice intersection, it is really busy right now. And I know Scott's a great engineer, so he'll probably figure out the traffic there. And I'm an engineer, so I understand that. But we are concerned about the traffic there, especially for all the high schoolers that leave the subdivision and go to the high school. But one thing we are concerned about is this zoning will allow residential above it. And I know Scott has said they right now do not plan to have residential above that, but we are very concerned that they might have residential above that and might change their mind. Once you guys say yes, it can be zoned that. We don't have a zone that says, no, it can just be commercial. If it's commercial, we're saying great. It could be developed. It's a great area to be developed because we do have the coffee shop there and other things. But we are very concerned about them having residential above that. And there's nothing that can stop that right now with this zone. So that's what we're concerned about. And if there's any way you guys can block that to where they can't have residential and just commercial, we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
So just for clarity,
Yes,
I want to be sure. You are speaking against it.
Against
but you're
it.
neutral.
well, I'm neutral because I don't mind the commercial.
Okay.
But what we're concerned about is they can put residential above
Okay,
it.
no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
because you spoke in
Exactly.
opposition and marked neutral. So I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure.
exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Ms. MacArthur, you care to rebut?
Ms. Rounds is also a good engineer. Thank you. I'm just kidding. No, I just wanted to say that it is our intent just for commercial use. The property is quite narrow, as I was just discussing with members of the audience. And residential development in this area would impact that intersection. So the frontage improvements that we're proposing now that our city staff has presented to us, we feel that just the site development just is strictly commercial. So commercial uses, non-residential uses. And I'm try to be a man of my word, and I've gone over this 100 times with my clients. Residential is permitted in that, the mixed use. So if a zoning development agreement needs to be put in place, then so be it.
Okay. Any questions, Scott, at this point?
Thank you.
Thank you. Close the public hearing. Council. Who'd like to start? Oh, we got to go through the 3 criteria. I'm sorry. I've only done this new one for like 6 months now. You think I figured it out, but.
All right, so on your deliberation sheets, we normally have annexations and zone changes. Tonight, we're just considering a zone change, so we don't have to worry about the legislative decision. So we're just dealing with the 3 approval criteria for the zone change. So the first review criteria is the proposed zoning district consistent with the future land use map and focus area contained in the currently adopted Post Falls Comprehensive Plan?
Yes, it's more consistent than what it's actually zoned as right now.
Yeah. Anybody else?
She had several head nods.
Is the proposed zoning district consistent with the goals and policies contained in the currently adopted comprehensive plan that are relevant to the area under consideration?
Yes, the focus area talks about more commercial development and job opportunities along the Southeast corridor. And this proposes to do exactly that. Also improves pedestrian connectivity with the frontage improvements.
Yeah. Agree.
I agree that it will meet that goal with the development agreement that makes sure there's no residential in it. It will not meet that goal if there's residential on that piece of property. So that's how I would like to answer that question.
Okay.
So the answer would be by majority, yes, it does. We can, if you want to talk about a restriction, we can do that when time comes, yep.
Right, and does the proposed zoning district create a demonstrable adverse impact upon the delivery of services by any political subdivision providing public services within the city?
They all said no. Or didn't comment.
So we've addressed the 3 requirements, criteria. Now, council, open it up for deliberation.
So Field, is there heartburn about a development agreement along with this?
So I don't know that it's certainly something that the council can consider and do. My only caveat to that is, we have zoning in place for a reason, and any time that you add a development agreement to a single parcel, you are placing an additional government restriction on that single parcel. And so, it's certainly in the purview of the council to do that. But when you start adding those development agreements to specific parcels, absent sort of really good reason to do so and evidence in the record to support that, it just can start to look like you're singling out individual parcels. So that's my only
I guess
caveat.
my thought would be, I understand what you're saying in a case where I probably would feel stronger about it if in fact the developer was opposed to that restriction. But if you get a developer who says if would be required by council for approval, they're willing to sign off on it. I can understand it may be additional regulation, but if the proponent or the developer is agreeing to it, I guess I would feel that it's that we're really signaling them out. But I understand what you're saying and agree. Again, if this was forced and they didn't want it, then I'd feel a little bit differently. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, it's just one more thing to look
Sure.
at for staff.
Sure. So you asked a question. Any other comments or?
No, that was it. I don't want to make life more difficult for, any more difficult than it has to be. But as you said, with the proponent planning a commercial only, and if Fields department doesn't have any big heartburn over it in general, then that's pretty much what I wanted to get across.
Any other comments?
I don't see any need to add any additional restrictions or complicate this further. I'd be happy just approving the zone as it is. We've demonstrated that it's consistent with everything. It meets all the rubrics here, so I'm happy moving forward with it that way.
Kenny?
I don't have a whole lot of concern that residential is going to go in there. Of all the places that we see that it could, that seems like the most unlikely place, just with the size and structure of it. If it was easy to throw in a restriction and we want to do that, I'd be fine with that, but I'm fine without any restriction.
Samantha?
I would like the restriction. I think that it's nice that the developers have stated that that's what they're going to do, and I don't know that I've seen this developer come forward since I've been on council, so I would appreciate that that is what they're going to do, but the feeling in the community is that is not always what happens, and the documents that were submitted in the packet from the community stated the same, that they're concerned with residential. So if it's not a lot of work for the city and it doesn't ruin the project for the developer, I think that it is the right thing to do as representing what citizens are saying they'd like to see in their town.
Josh?
I'm okay either way. I'm okay to approve it as it is, but have no heartburn against putting any additional restrictions on it.
So it sounds like it's going to move forward one way or another, so I'll entertain a motion. How you want to?
I would move to approve our next venture zone change file number ZC-23-4 with a development agreement prohibiting residential.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Shannon, please take the roll.
Malloy,
Aye.
Stiglater,
Aye.
Westland,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Just so I'm clear for drafting wise, no residential, including sort of the mixed-use residential or just multifamily? Sorry, I should have asked that question.
No residential, period.
Period. Got it.
Next item up is unfinished business, and we have one item tonight, Public Works Operations Center Planning Services.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm John Beecham, Public Works Director with the city, here to talk about a planning services contract with Integris Engineers for a future Public Works Operations Center. Most of my presentation is background for how we got to this stage, and then a little bit on the contract itself, but happy to answer any questions at the end of it. Launching into the background, in 2021, the city finalized a facilities master plan. Facilities needs assessment is what it was titled, but it's basically outlining the space needs for staff and storage and parking and that sort of thing for all of the different city entities. Out of that plan came a purchase of what's called the Hargrave property. That's midway between Corbin and Pleasant View Road on Hargrave Avenue. 14 acres jointly purchased with Parks. That is for a future Public Works Operations Center, coming out of recommendations in that plan to purchase property. The police department made a similar purchase next door to their campus for future expansion as well. So just to show kind of, we've been implementing this plan for a few years now. Another thing in that facilities plan was to remodel the existing streets facility, which is currently housed on the property owned by the water reclamation facility. The remodel was basically a Band-Aid to get by for a few years, or about 10 years, maybe 15, until a new site could get built on a future property. The existing facility is a repurposed car dealership. It is undersized, not well utilized just because it's not built for what we use it for. And the condition is okay. It's an older building. It's been maintained in a decent condition. The future use for that space is treatment infrastructure at the water reclamation facility. When we looked at doing a remodel, and we actually had an architect look at what it would take to make that facility work for 10, 15 years and develop a cost estimate, and that's when the brakes went on with the remodel project. We looked at it and said we need to talk to council about this, brought it to council. It was determined that $1 million remodel on something that was probably going to get knocked down in 10 years did not make sense. So we looked at, do we want to move up in priority something, a longer term solution within that facilities plan? Council's direction was yes, try to make that happen, try to figure out the financing of it. We spent some time looking into bond financing, came back that is an option, but it's not necessarily recommended when the city does have cash to move forward with some of these projects as it does currently. Staff was also directed to try to get some more accurate cost estimates. We got some back of the napkin cost estimates from the architect who is proposing the remodel. But what I'm here tonight to propose is that we get a kind of a full cost estimate for developing that site, putting in the infrastructure needed for the facility, building the facility, looking at what it will be in 20 years. So we build the first building in the right spot so trucks can get in and out and around it. And that is, in a nutshell, what we're looking at doing with this contract. Laying out the site, developing cost estimates for that, laying out a phase 1 project, which would meet the immediate needs, developing a cost for that, and using that information to come back with future projects or future amendments to our facilities plan for you all. The cost of the contract is about $75,000. A decent chunk of that is engineering costs. We have to build a road to it. We need to get water and some sort of sewer services, as well as all the usual site improvements to get the vehicles in and out, parking and that sort of thing. We are requesting a contingency on this. The contingency percentage is 10%. The dollar figure on that is $7,500 approximately. Basically, that's if we come across something that needs some additional study in the project, but we haven't scoped at this point, we would authorize that. And there is money in the fiscal year 24 budget for the streets remodel. This serves toward that streets remodel, so we're proposing to use that money. That, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, John, at this point? So we'll float a motion?
I move to approve the Public Works Operations Center planning services.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Westland,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Stigleader,
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, John. We're now into new business, and we've got 3 items. First is Community Garden Parking Lot Construction Agreement. Robbie.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Robbie Quinn, Parks Planner, here this evening seeking council's approval on the construction contract for the community garden parking lot and associated site improvements. A little bit of background, community garden located just north of Black Bay along 3rd Avenue and south of the Centennial Trail. Black Bay Depot right here. So you can see the site outlined in red. Primarily undeveloped. We do have a kind of a rec building here and then actual gardening plots. The plots themselves will not be impacted by this project, but the other portions of the undeveloped site will. There was a master plan produced by BWA back in May of 2019, so about 5 years ago, and that's shown here. And this was approved by the Park and Rec Commission, generally looking at adding parking, walking paths throughout the site, seating areas, and then kind of demonstration gardens to show different types of plantings that residents could take home to their own yards. So looking at that concept, we kind of did some revisions mainly to the parking lot to create more of an efficient flow of traffic with a loop pattern here, also better for emergency access and in additional parking as well. And then again, still maintaining the paths and the demonstration gardens. So this is primarily what will be constructed for this phase. We're not necessarily looking at a lot of the demonstration gardens yet, just getting in the main infrastructure right now. And so once we had that revised concept, we contracted with JB to do the construction documents, so engineering, grading, drainage, all that sort of stuff. And then city staff provided the landscape and irrigation drawings. So we put this out to bid at the end of March, and we got 4 bids back. The low bid being La Riviere at $582,547.33, which is about $30,000 over the engineer's estimate. And that estimate was about 2 years old. As you say, this 5-year project that we've been working on, so it was a little dated, so we're pretty pleased with how it actually came in. And then you can see the other bids as well. So after JUB's review, city staff review, we deemed La Riviere to be the low responsive bidder and are recommending them for award. Also seeking 10% contingency in the amount of $58,254.73, bringing the total construction $640,802.06, and this would be paid out impact fees and general fund dollars. Along with that, there will be a CA agreement with JUB for kind of managing the project, submittals, review, pay apps, weekly meetings, that sort of thing, and for about a 12-week construction window, and that total was $30,000. So in summary, total for tonight, $670,802.06 is what we're asking for approval on.
And that all will come out of the impact fees?
Impact fee and general fund.
Which part comes out of general fund? And
So the construction is split almost 50-50. There's like $340 for general fund, $300 for impact fees, and then the consultant contract is just under our general fund professional service budget.
Okay, so it was budgeted then for under general fund?
Correct.
That dollar amount, okay. Any questions, Robbie? That park's been underutilized. That's, a Rotary Club built that building in cooperation with city staff, and it's named after Ray Norton, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken.
Yep, that was just this last year. we
Yeah,
made
so
that
it's been there for 5 years, and it's just really not been used, so I think having a place to park and creating the gardens would be nice.
So with that, any questions?
I do have a question,
ahead.
I'm sorry. It looks beautiful and is lovely. We're using impact fees for it. Will we have it within the budget in years to come to update it? I mean, to keep it maintained? Have we looked at the maintenance cost of it going forward for the parks budget?
I mean, not necessarily the cost, however, the parks manager, Brian, and his staff have obviously been involved in this the whole time, so they are aware of the impacts it'll have on them and their staff.
Okay, and we're confident that that's fine within our
Yes.
budget?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Shouldn't be a lot of mowing or upkeep, I wouldn't think.
No
on this
mowing,
park.
there'll be more plant kind of
Right.
maintenance, though.
Right. Any other comments or questions?
Sounds good to me.
Entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the community garden parking lot construction agreements.
Second.
Motion seconds, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Westland,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Stigleader,
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you.
Next item up is purchase a pump for 3rd Avenue Lift Station. Craig?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Craig Bornpool, Utilities Manager for the city. I'm presenting next on the 3rd Avenue Lift Station and proposal for a motor and pump purchase. So the 3rd Avenue Lift Station basin was evaluated as part of the 12th Avenue Lift Station force main project. As part of that project, they're going to be running force main just to a portion of, down a portion of 12th Avenue, dumping into the Sugar Maple line, which eventually feeds into the 3rd Avenue Lift Station basin. So we had an engineer evaluate would there be any impacts. It doesn't really change the flow into the basin. The overall flow will stay about the same, but it may see some different peaks as those flows hit. So we wanted to make sure that that lift station had adequate capacity. So we had consultant develop a system curve for the lift station, and we used that in our typical process for identifying the appropriate pump motor for that. In following our typical procurement process, a pump and motor was identified, typical supplier that we've worked with. Based on this purchase price, it does have to come before council before a purchase order can be issued, which is why I'm bringing it forward as opposed to just following our normal have John sign the PO. It's of such a value and this pump and motor are so big that it has to come before you. So it would be funded through the lift station equipment replacement budget. Budget code is there and does have adequate funding for that purchase. Any questions?
Craig, is there a pump there now that's being replaced?
There is.
Is the city able to keep that pump as a backup for anything else should the need arise, or for a smaller location?
Yes, and we've done that several times before as various pumps are pulled or moved into new lift stations. So, yep,
Okay.
we will be able to reutilize that where appropriate.
Okay. Any questions, Greg? Entertain a motion.
Move to approve the purchase of pump for the 3rd Avenue lift station.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Walker,
That was you. Sorry.
Shove,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Stigliter,
Aye.
Westland.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Sorry for coughing in your roll call. Next up is a solids hopper building modification bid review.
Good evening again. Craig Morpole, Utilities Manager for the city. My next item for this evening is a bid review for solid hopper modification project. This is a project, a smaller project we've been kind of working on as a more of a maintenance type item. And so we're looking at modifying our existing solids hopper loadout facility to account for some of the issues that we have had with it, freezing in the winter and damaging some of the equipment. So we've recognized the need and brought on a consultant to develop some plans that would address these issues. The design called for isolating that loadout hopper or the loadout auger from the hopper that holds our solids. A smaller project, as I said, worked through the anticipated cost of doing that work. And based on that cost, Idaho code allows for informal bidding of public works projects below a certain value. That value is $200,000. So based on initial discussions, we thought we would be in that ballpark. Bids were solicited from 3 contractors. We had a bid meeting with them. Nothing was flagged that would make us think this would come in very high. All bids received were above that Idaho code threshold. Conversations with legal indicated that awarding the bid may be possible. It was done, all work was done in good faith. But in thinking through, and we knew it was a contingency that it might come in high, we had, in building this package, tried to reduce its scope to maybe hit that number. So thinking of some of the opportunity to add in other work that needs to be done, as well as account for some variability that we've heard in delivery of some city procured equipment, we felt it was in the city's best interest to, at this point, reject all bids. So we're often coming before you asking for authorization to award a bid. This is a little unique situation where we're asking for rejecting of all bids. So wanted to go through kind of what might happen if rejected or if we decide to move forward. So if rejected, we would negotiate an amendment to our engineering contract to do some of that additional work that we've looked at. They felt that it was pretty small. We do have some funding contingency that would be available to pay for that. If that's enough, we'll move forward with that. If we do need additional funding, it might come back to City Council for that contract amendment. But work with our contract to get the additional work included into that scope. That work, the primary item is replacing of the biomedia filter. That's our odor control that's out near Celtice. The biofilter media has a lifespan. It gets used up and is reaching the end of that lifespan. We want to replace that media. So we would be incorporating that work into the larger project. We'd also confirm anticipated delivery for some of those city procured pieces, so we didn't hold up a contractor, and then go out and rebid that whole package under the normal typical competitive bidding procedures. If we did want to award the project, the low bid that we got from that informal bid was $329,984.45. We do have funding for these projects in the WRF Odor Solids Dewatering Project budget code. We would move forward per the contract documents, but we'd want to be prepared if a bid protest was issued. We'd also want to be prepared if materials availability impacted the contract schedule in those contract documents. And we would still try and move forward with the biofilter media replacement as its own smaller separate project. That would have kind of maybe some incurred additional costs there, not taking advantage of combining them. So balancing rejecting all bids or moving forward with awarding, those are the 2 options that I see.
We don't get too many options to not spend money. Kind of nice. Council.
What's the informal bid process? So that's under 200,000. I assume that's less paperwork and red tape.
It's one of the biggest advantages is it limits, it allows us to go out and talk to contractors, at least 3 that we want to talk to. So that was one reason that we were really motivated to try and have that scope to where it might fit within there. We make sure that they were professionals in the area of work that we were doing. So going out to a normal competitive bid, it's open to anybody who meets the licensure requirements and bidding thresholds there. Those are the biggest difference between the two.
Okay, so we have some control over which contractors are involved if we do the informal process.
Correct.
I see.
But you still have to select the lowest bid.
You still
can't-
have to select the lowest bid, yes.
So you want us to reject, right?
Correct.
I would move to reject the solids hopper building modification bids.
Second.
Motion second for the discussion. Roll call, please.
Shove,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Stigleader,
Aye.
Westland,
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Craig. Next item up tonight is citizens' issue, and this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council regarding city-related issues that are not on the agenda. If anyone wishes to testify, come forward. Seeing none. Administrative staff reports. First, the Spokane Street project. We're getting seasick.
Sorry. Could not find that. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Andrew Arbini, Projects Division Manager. So tonight's staff report is an update on the Spokane Street project. A little bit of context on this. When I submitted the agenda report last week, we had planned to start construction yesterday. So at this point, I assumed you would all be aware of the traffic impacts on Spokane Street. Since that time, the contractor has delayed the start of the work to July. The driver in that delay is actually the permitting process with BNSF in finalizing the needed permits. So that July start date would give the contractor enough time to finalize that, so they'd be ready to start. In the meantime, the update tonight is what citizens can expect once we do start the work, and an update on not only our project, but all of the projects that are occurring in the downtown area. This is the general limits of our project, so Spokane Street from the north end of the bridge to the eastbound ramps, and then we have some utility work planned at the intersection of Celtice and Spokane. Project elements, we've presented a few times over the last year. Not a lot of changes. The primary upgrade is replacing the asphalt. So we're resurfacing Spokane Street. While we are doing that, we're taking advantage of some utility work. Plan to replace some hydrants, water main extension, dry conduit installation underneath the railroad, and the surface crossing improvements with the railroad. Those two pieces go together and are a big part of the project. Overall, this is being funded through a grant fund from ITD through this Strategic Initiatives Grant. There was a question a while back at a previous presentation when this funding needed to be expended, and that is this year. So we are still planning the project for this year. We've awarded the contract with the goal of completing by the end of the year, which is also the deadline for the grant funding. Traffic control, it always looks bigger when I'm working on it on my computer, so maybe I should have enhanced this a little more before I put it on the screen. You can see the labels, hopefully, the 4th Avenue and 1st Avenue and Henry Street. So that is the detour route during construction. This is the base traffic control that we provided, our design consultant provided this to contractors. I don't anticipate a lot of changes to this. But the contractor could make some minor adjustments. Essentially, we plan to maintain one direction of travel through Spokane Street, through the project zone, through the entirety of the project. So this is showing a northbound detour on Henry. Southbound traffic would continue through. When the contractor's finished on that side of the road, they'd switch, and then the direction of traffic would would change as well through the detour. There will be a complete closure of Spokane Street. That will be a truncated time frame while we do the rail crossing work that requires both directions of travel to be detoured on Henry. This shows all of the projects. Well, actually not all of the projects, but the biggest of impact to the south of our work is the Post Falls Highway District Bridge project. That is actually was starting this week. I believe that was moved to Thursday. I think the 9th is when that work will start. They will have a one-lane closure on the bridge, temporary traffic signals from Thursday to October is what we've been told. Our work is planned to start in July with the deadline of October to be complete. We are also talking with ITD. So shortly after we bid the project, ITD approached us and said, hey, we hear that you're paving this road. We'd like to consider extending that paving limit and addressing a portion of our area that is in dire repair and see this as a vehicle to get some of their work completed. That is progressing. We anticipate that we would have an agreement with ITD outlining the reimbursement and specifics of that at a future council meeting to come. A couple other projects in the area. So Avista has started the dam rehabilitation project. That is a multi-year project, as I understand. Don't anticipate significant impacts on Spokane Street. We are coordinating with their project as they will utilize Spokane Street for equipment access. And then the Idaho and 4th roundabout construction is underway. Recent update that I heard is July timeframe for completion of that intersection. So one positive in the list of work happening, that by the time we start our work, Idaho and 4th intersection should be nearing completion. So a few things that we've been doing as a public outreach, and getting the word out and communicating what impacts citizens can expect. We've been working with our local EMS services. Also, the Post Falls Highway District has done the same for their project. Been in close communication on that. We've worked with the Post Falls Chamber. Actually presented yesterday. Had about a dozen businesses, local businesses, drop in and provided project information and just an FYI of what we are doing and what to expect. We've also developed a project flyer, which I have an example of on the next slide. That will also provide a link to the city's webpage, which we are maintaining throughout the project, so citizens can go there and receive updates on the project. And this is an example of what, with media, Stephanie was instrumental in developing the project flyer for us, so great thanks for that. And then on the right side is Post Falls Highway District. They're not much of a flyer, more of a notice of construction activity. So they will largely impact water recreation in that area. Updated timeline, mostly. Information has changed just in the last couple of days. The Spokane Street project, this is the most current information, looking to start in July, as I mentioned. For the Highway District, they are looking to start Thursday, from what we've heard recently. And then their completion is also that October timeframe. This is sort of a next steps. Mentioned we are negotiating a proposal with ITD, assuming we can come to an agreement that would add that additional work, which would be great for both ITD and Spokane, or for the city of Post Falls. At the same time, we recognize added impacts. I anticipate that would likely be nighttime work, and to the extent we can work that into the work that's happening at 41 and I-90 and not causing further impacts, we are working to move that one forward. That is what I have for an update. I answer any questions that you might have.
Good information. I wish they wouldn't have delayed the start of Spokane Street. I wish we could get into it and get out, but understand, especially when you're dealing with the railroad, that's never easy. So unfortunately, it is what it is, but I think that's good information. Council comments?
Will the sidewalks on the bridge be closed for the entirety of that construction?
No, they will have a detour for pedestrians.
Swim.
Yeah, I guess.
Yes?
On the bridge. Detour on the bridge, as I've understood it.
So I guess I'm one of those that's gonna be uniquely impacted by all the construction because the nearest freeway on-ramp to me is the 41. The next one is Spokane Street. 41 is also gonna be chewed up all through this construction season too, right?
The 41 interchange continues for a while.
Through 2026.
So that's through next year, well, 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years. That's gonna be fun.
Yes, yes. I live it every day.
Yes, you and me
Uh,
both.
So one thing we did find out in working with our contractor and the highway district contractor, which is a good thing, the traffic control subcontractor is the same for both projects, which each project is independent, but they hire the same traffic control subs. From the standpoint of communication, and I anticipate we will have some challenges to address, especially when we start our work with temp traffic signals on the bridge and getting our traffic control to work together and peak travel times, some adjustments to be made on the fly. And I think anytime you can have the same team working between both projects, that should help in that.
But it's gonna be a mess for you.
Yeah, I guess it's probably an email to Rob some other time, but I'm assuming there's gonna be a lot more traffic on Mullen trying to avoid all that stuff by going north of the freeway and getting over, but I don't know how much that'll affect traffic light timings. I'll send you an email. Don't need to take up council time for that.
Any other comments?
I have one other question, I'm sorry. So have we planned for like the River City, Music Day
Music.
Festival? How people are gonna be able to get, cause that's like right in the middle of Spokane Street, right? That's already been figured out?
The River City, is it the market and music and market?
Yeah.
So I was discussing this with Christina,
Okay.
had it yesterday, and our project will maintain access to 4th Avenue off of Spokane Street at all times. That
Okay,
the
and
access
that's
will
the
be there.
entrance. Okay.
There will be an impact
Okay.
between the Avista project. So Avista currently has the parking lot closed for Falls Park for the next 3 years. So parking, I think, is
Oh.
being moved for that event, being provided at other locations. One of those would be City Hall after hours, with some other locations that Christina is working to identify. To the extent we can mitigate on Wednesday evenings, providing improvements to move traffic through, we will do that. Outside of that process or delaying the project, the contractor has flexibility to start the work when they are ready. So
Okay.
we're more of working together and figuring out ways to mitigate that, but there will be an impact, and especially Wednesday nights. That seems to be a very popular event.
Okay, thank you.
The good news is the roundabout construction will be completed by the 1st of July, so
Mm.
we won't have that impacting the River City Market and Music. It'll
Okay.
just be coming off of Spokane. It's actually, Vista's the one trying to get the additional parking because they're obligated to do so. So they are working on trying to get
Oh.
parking there right behind Rogers potentially, to add for another parking area.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item up is community parade support requests.
I don't often come on this side. So this is just intended to be a discussion tonight. As part of our strategic plan, we put in place some additional policies. One of them last year was a nonprofit policy, and it was looking at nonprofits where the city is providing support or dollars to those nonprofits, and they're required to fill out an application. Honestly, we didn't even think about the parade when we were putting together that policy. The Post Falls Community Ambassadors have been hosting the parade the last several years. And so the chamber right now accepts applications and accepts the funding. The funding goes to the Post Falls Community Ambassadors. On the back side of that, the city has been doing the traffic management, the security, assistance with planning, golf carts, clipboards, cones, and sandwich boards. In my memo, I kind of outlined the process that we've been going through each year. And so they had a request for us to do that same process again this year. Due to the number of officers that were down in the police department, the chief had responded back that it wasn't possible for us to do all the traffic management piece. And looking at other parades across the region, they use traffic management companies for that, and then the cities just provide more of the officers for the safety piece of that program. And so we had recommended that they look at hiring a traffic management control company for that part of the parade. They had reached back out to us and said that they were going to cancel the parade. I've since heard that they're trying to get the parade going again. I'm not sure 100% on the status of the parade at this point, but we do have an application from the community ambassadors in here. That aside, we thought it was appropriate to come to the council, have a conversation about what type of support you'd like to see for that parade from the city and from the staff. So the current practice, we say it's not sustainable because we don't have a dedicated revenue source for that. Using city staff and our officer numbers, I didn't put it in the slide, but it's about 24 officers and 3 to 4 streets folks for 175 hours of staff time for the parade right now with the way it's being handled. And that cost is $11,000 just in hard cost to the employee for wages. That doesn't include any overhead costs, the costs of the cones or the golf carts or any of that kind of stuff. Is just for the wages themselves. That wages at overtime though. Right now, no formal policy exists, so we would like to have a formal policy. And looking at Sandpoint, Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, Moscow, Lewiston, they all have some formal policies. Again, it would provide clear direction for us and also for the ambassadors. They would like to have clear direction also. And it would ensure safety of the citizens and the employees by making sure that we did have a clear process, closures of the streets, those kinds of things outlined for everybody. And we could eventually have other folks who want to have parades also. We've had a couple of special parades over the years when we had some military programs that were going on, and those were hosted by other folks. And we just in the past have just kind of made them work. We haven't had a real great process for those. Alternatives to consider is outlining a policy with the parameters. So we gave some example cities where there would be the person or the nonprofit who wants to have the parade would work with the, whether it's ITD or it's the highway district, whoever's in control of the roads, on the road closures themselves. If it was local city streets, then they would work with the city. We would recommend including fees for the application processing, any rentals, street closures themselves, costs that would support the personnel. The parades would do the traffic management. They would also provide the insurance and do the staging for the event. And so it just clearly outlines everything. They do have some volunteers that assist them with putting, and I know Rotary used to also assist with some of the traffic control, or not traffic control, but the crowd management part for the parade. So tonight's just really a conversation. Develop a policy as outlined, develop a policy with recommended changes. You can tell us to move forward and just keep doing what we're doing, and just not have a policy and just support as the parade comes forward. You can provide support for this year, not provide support for this year. This year, again, Chief, did you hear back? John Beecham had told me that he did get an email asking whether or not they could borrow cones. So I think they're still trying to feel out whether or not a parade is feasible for this year. And then also just go forward providing limited support. Like we could provide the codes. John said it might actually still be easier for us. He had a family emergency, so he had to leave. But it might be easier for us to have our 3 to 4 streets guys go ahead and rent those cones out and pick them up this year. They're not as short on staff members as we are on the police department. So I'd just love to hear your guys' thoughts on anything that you might like to see us do with the policy, what you would like to see included in a policy if we bring it forward, and what type of support you'd like the city to have for the parade.
First, I think it is important to have a policy, because then if we've got something to follow, then, and we do follow it, then it prevents any issues with one group claiming favoritism to another group or something like that. If we treat every request the same per a policy, I think that's step one for sure. So I'm glad we're moving in that direction.
I'm not familiar with the community ambassadors or how the parade is managed. Can you speak a little to what that organization
Sure,
is? And are they charging for
yeah,
people?
this kind of organically happened over time. So the chamber had decided to kind of step out of hosting the parade, And at the time, the gentleman's name is Scott Hogue, he was our chief of police. He got together with the fire chief, which was Warren Merritt at the time, and they created this nonprofit to kind of host the parade. That's part of the reason why the city's doing so much support. It actually started out of one of the lead members of this group being a city employee. And so the next chief of police, Pat Knight, is also on that committee for the nonprofit. And so they decided to step up and said, basically, we'll go ahead and host the parade using city staff members to put it together. You had the nonprofit filling out the application. Actually, we've been signing, we believe, the application for, is it ITD or Highway District? The Highway District on the road closure, and we can't actually do that. So going forward, we can't do that. The nonprofit does have to sign it. But it just kind of started from one of our employees who wanted to see the parade go on. I think there were some members of the chamber and some of our council members at the time that wanted to see the parade continue. And so this nonprofit kind of started up as the host, but it was really city staff doing all the work. Since that time, all of the members that are in this committee no longer work for any of the public agencies here. So the Warren Merritt retired as their fire chief. Scott Hogue retired, Pat Knight retired, and I think Charlene Holbrook also retired from our police department, is the fourth member of this nonprofit. So none of them currently work for the city or for the fire district. So it's kind of created the separation where some of the legal documents now have to also be changed.
Right. Are they charging for people to have floats in the parade?
Yeah, so there's an application fee, and then they also have some sponsorships. And that is pretty normal. That's what, again, looking at, we kind of reached out and talked to Cord Lane, and Rhiannon did most of the legwork on this. Sandpoint, Lewiston, Moscow. She got Spokane's, but she didn't actually talk directly to anyone over there. And what they do is they use those sponsorships and the application fees to pay for the traffic management control company and any other costs that they might have as far as any rental fees or any fees that go to the city for support.
So what's the expected cost that they would have to bear to run this? If we set this up where we're not putting in any additional resources for free into the parade.
You know, I'm not sure on that. I didn't get that number from the other folks that were doing. I know for us it's about 11,000 in staff time.
Okay.
But I don't know how much it costs to hire a traffic management control company to come out and do that. Rob, would you have any idea on that?
Well, you probably get that
I
information.
could get that
at
number for
quarterly.
you and bring it back with the policy recommendation when we get ready to bring this back. And we can bring this back again and do a policy at the third time. This is really planning for next year, because whatever's going to happen this year, we'll try to figure it out.
You know, there's actually been a bit of a precedence on this. First year of Ironman came through Post Falls. And Post Falls Police Department provided all the officers, et cetera, closed the roads. It was a massive undertaking. And the late Cliff Hayes, who was police chief at the time, says, we're not doing it. It's different because Ironman is there to make money, but they weren't paying for any of it. And Chief Hayes says, we're not doing it. And so they moved the bicycle portion out of Post Falls. And so again, this has happened in the past where the question came up is who pays for that, the traffic control and law enforcement when we need it for an event like this. So I think it's definitely something worth addressing and getting into a policy.
I'm not opposed to the city providing some amount of support to community events like this. I think it's important to build a culture and to have stuff here. And we don't want everybody to be going to Coeur d'Alene all the time whenever there's some exciting event, because it's always there. But I agree. We need some way to lay this out of here's how the process works, and here is our commitment, so that groups who want to hold an event like this kind of have a clear picture going into it for what they can expect. And I'm not sure what that balance needs to be. I don't want to make it prohibitively expensive for them to have a parade, because I think that's important to have. But we also don't want to just be throwing unlimited resources at it out of the city's budget. So.
And I think Cord Lane, looking at what their new policy, they're just updating it. It looks like it kind of does balance. They're going to provide some support, and then there are some costs. And so we could just bring forward their, look at theirs, look at Lewiston, Moscow. Those seem to be the three that were closest to us, and bring something forward to council to view on that.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Next item up, exit interview procedures.
Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, members of the council, Janet Best, Human Resources Director. I understand that the last council meeting I was at a conference and there was some questions brought up about exit interviews, and I just want to talk a little bit about how the city conducts those. The purpose is to understand the reasons why employees are leaving the city of Post Falls. The importance is we want to gather that feedback to come back and see what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, how can we fix it, is it something that can be fixed. Confidentiality is kept in their personnel file to be kept for a period of time until those records can be destructed. We usually schedule those exit interviews about a week before they leave. Sometimes they leave, they put their 2 weeks notice in, and then they're gone. So it's kind of hard to get that exit interview. Some of them do not wish to have the exit interview, but the people that do, we try to get those in before they leave. People who resign in lieu of termination and people who are terminated, we don't normally do those exit interviews with. They do have the name clearing hearing, which is outlined in our city policy through our city administrator and deputy city administrator. It would be either myself and the employee or Melissa and the employee, our HR manager. The format we use is a structured questionnaire which asks the same kind of questions to each person. Usually it ends up being a discussion. They go off, in a different tangent that's not on the sheet, not on the paper, and we can discuss that as well. Again, those documents are kept confidential. They can be put together if the certain department, we keep seeing a lot of turnover, start looking at to see what are some of the common themes in those exit interviews, what's going on in that department. We can identify the trends, issues in a work environment. Is it the structure? Is it management? Is it pay? What is it? We can put all those together. Improving to create training programs, to create new policies. Staff is working on personnel policy right now to bring forth to you in a few months with some updates and changes in that policy. We just want to improve all the time. We want to keep our employees happy. There were stay interviews that have been conducted with our existing employees, thinking maybe if we ask those same questions in the exit interview of our people that are here now, why are you here? What benefits do you like? What do you like to see changed? Letting the employees know that not every suggestion is obviously going to happen. We have to look to see what those suggestions are and step back and see what we can reasonably accomplish for the employees doing those stay interviews. So basically that's all that we are doing on exit interviews. When they come in, we do conduct them in HR, trying to get the employees in before they leave.
Janet, can you explain what you do when somebody does not choose to have an exit interview? And how often is it that an employee would choose to not have an exit interview?
It's pretty often. Usually if they're leaving, the ones that I can remember are leaving angry. The last thing they want to do is come in and talk to me. Or if they do leave angry, they want to come in and blast everybody else around them. They blast their manager, they blast their coworkers. So it's difficult to get them focused back into the questions at hand. So yeah, it's can be a difficult task trying to get them to come in.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions, comments?
I do have a question, or
Good,
two
Jim.
questions. First one would be, what would it take for us to be able to see all those exit interviews? Is there a problem legally with us doing that? And what would be the setup to do that?
Yeah, so first off, they are confidential public records, so they are records involving a particular person, so the person would have to consent individually to that record being shared. And the other aspect of that is sort of personnel sort of issues and that sort of thing are really the purview of the mayor's office as the chief executive of the city, whereas the city council functions more as a policy setting legislative body. So certainly there can be sort of aggregated data, like we're seeing these trends happening in these areas. that's easily able to come forward to council. But that's kind of the legal issues with that.
Second question, you had two?
Yeah, second question would be, if someone doesn't want to come in to do an interview, is there a way we could send them an email, say, hey, this is something you can just fill out, you don't have to come in and see anyone? Is that an option that we could just send them something so they can still do the interview if they don't want to see anyone anymore?
Yeah,
We've talked about doing sort of like a survey to send out to the employee that has left, email it out to them, mail it to them maybe, and say, hey, can you take a quick 5 minutes and just fill out this survey? It's another avenue in which we can get their feedback, definitely.
So is this something that has been done over the past couple of years that we have data from?
We would have data from, yes.
Are there any particular trends in aggregate from that where we can see why people were leaving?
Without looking at it, I don't have the answer, but I can get it for you.
Usually if there's going to be a trend, and it has not happened, but if there is, Shelley, Warren would bring it to my attention, and if it was something that was noticeable, then it would come to council.
And the most frequent one over time that I've been here is usually something to do with pay, like what we saw last fall with the county and Coeur d'Alene adjusting their pay on the patrol side. We had officers looking to go to those two agencies because the pay was $5 more an hour. I don't remember the number. And so if I were to pick one that I've heard
Yeah.
the most often, it's pay.
That's what I would expect. And
Yeah.
since it's our job to set the budget, if we have a lot of people leaving because of pay issues, that would be something that would be, important for us to know. when
And
we're
that does come,
going through.
that does come forward when they bring the personnel budget forward. They will talk about that. They'll talk about the staff, if we've had significant turnover,
Yeah.
and what their recommendation is to combat that loss of people. So you will see that.
And right now, Janet is working with Warren and Jason on a compensation RFQ to look at doing a full compensation study. And that would have aggregate data that you
Yeah.
guys would see. And it would be showing how much we're off the market in these areas and what those wages need to be adjusted to be. And so you would get that packet basically once that compensation study is done. It would show you all of that.
We've done some fairly significant modifications to salaries over the years, just to remain competitive.
Yeah, we just haven't done a formal compensation study in a very long time. It's been little pieces here and there.
Yeah, it's good to keep on top of that because things are changing so fast in today's world. It's like if you have financial data and it's 5 years old, it's not good anymore.
I would agree,
It's a
yes.
problem, they talk about on the law enforcement, for example, this year, we talked about this, where we go out and we check with the local neighboring agencies, and, we kind of get a feel for where they are and where we are, so we set the budget accordingly, and then 2 months after they set their budget, or 2 weeks after, they come out with, we found a pot of money, and that's tough to compete against. That's really tough on the financial side. So I think staff does a pretty good job of trying to prevent that. So.
If I may, I appreciate that we did have an exit of police officers last year, and I'm curious if we are truly getting our information that it was just it was the money that made these officers or encouraged these officers to leave from exit interviews that we did. Was that, so we did exit interviews for these officers, and then the aggregate data from those exit interviews was that it was just about their salary that was the reason that they left?
If you're talking about the specific officers that left last year,
I am.
we did not get exit interviews with them.
Was there 7 or 8 officers that we lost in that 1 year?
We're looking at about 10.
And we didn't get exit interviews for any 10
I
of
got
them?
one phone call back, and then reached back out to the particular individual, and they didn't return my call,
Gotcha, okay.
so.
And that's unfortunate for us, because it
Yeah.
makes it hard to improve. I guess my trepidation, heartburn, things that keep me up at night would be that because we don't have that data, we can't definitively say based on data that it was just the salary. And so since we are a policy and legislative acting group, I just wonder if there are other things to also look at than just the money. So I appreciate the work that you do for the exit interviews, and I appreciate that it is a very difficult it's a difficult thing to get people to do. So I would be in support of Counselor Shove's ideas of finding other ways to get that data, because I think it would be important to make additional improvements to additional departments. So.
The other suggestion we had was to meet them outside of City Hall, or to not meet them at their place of business, but maybe down in the rotunda, or, you know, somewhere that's not in an office setting, and they might be a little more apt to come in. So we'll look at all options to get them to
Sounds
come.
great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say I did, on one occasion, met them. I had a request for someone to meet me, which I did. And the story I was told, I listened very patiently. And when that came forward, it was a completely different story. And our insurance company had been involved from the start of it. So we heard one story, and it was not the story that was the fact. So we have to be careful of that as well.
Could council have access to the name clearing policy? Is that something that we're allowed to view?
Yeah, it's right in our personnel policy. So in the morning I can, or Phil, do you have it since you're working on it right now?
I mean, it's in the existing
We can
personnel
forward it
policy.
to
We
you in
can-
the
Like I
morning.
can just,
Yeah.
send that out.
okay, thank you so much.
One more comment is, if we have people leaving who are frustrated and don't want to go through the exit interview process, that could mean that there's something that, like, we really need to hear that perspective. I'd be open to doing something like, we'll give you $100 in exchange for honest feedback, and just kind of sweeten that deal a little bit, like, because that's valuable to us as a city, right? And maybe that helps somebody overcome this, oh, I don't want to get out of bed and go back to City Hall kind of thing. Something to consider.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet.
Thanks.
Mayor and council comments. I have none tonight. How about council?
I do have one.
Good.
I know we've talked about this before, but just, it's been brought up again. Kind of want to touch on the citizen issue. If there's a way we can move that subject up to the beginning of the meeting, maybe even have two, beginning of the meeting and then where it is right now, if people are running late. But we had a gentleman that came talking about the traffic stuff, I don't know, a month ago. He sat here for 2.5 hours to share with us for a couple minutes, and that really doesn't give a good statement to the public when we want them to come, but they have to sit for 2.5 hours. So I want to open that conversation again, if we can somehow move that to the beginning of the meeting, or have two sections so we can get the most out of public.
That was changed a few years back. It was at a different time, and I can't remember when it was, and there was reasons for that, but let's have staff take a look at that.
Yeah, we can take a look at it. I think it was just, we used the new layout that was recommended and it moved it further down.
Yeah.
Well,
But
part
I
of
think
the
Coeur
issue-
d'Alene's does theirs, Coeur d'Alene does theirs at the beginning, if I recall.
If I remember correctly, we were running into issues with, because to stay in line with open meeting statutes, they can't talk about stuff that's on the night's agenda, because then if somebody wanted to rebut that, there wasn't any proper
Right.
noticing for them to come and rebut whatever that person was gonna say. So we used to have it towards the beginning of the meeting, and there was a tendency for people to want to talk about stuff that was on that night's agenda. So to avoid that problem, of course, you gotta cut them off, and they get really upset because then we don't wanna hear from the public, and we're closing them out. So we moved it down past the action items so that they didn't have an opportunity that was to talk about something that was on the night's agenda, or if they did, at least the business was already done, so it couldn't influence that.
And to dovetail on that, strategically, it comes right before sort of admin reports and council reports. And so the other idea was that if a citizen brought something forward that council wanted to take, to bring back during council comments, that they could say, you know, the citizen made a good point, we'd like to see this come back on another agenda, and sort of facilitate that discussion while it was fresh in everyone's minds.
Can you help me remember? I'm sorry. So when we have an ordinance come through, does that go under public hearing, or does that just go under action items?
It depends on if the ordinance change requires a public hearing or not.
Gotcha. Okay.
Some do, some don't. Generally, for legislative, public safety kind of ordinances, they don't require a public hearing. It will come under new business, be considered, and then be brought back under returning ordinances for actual adoption.
I guess what I'm sort of curious about is if, say, there was a citizen that had an opinion on what kind of pump we purchased for 3rd Street. I don't know. It's not technically they're not given the opportunity to comment, but it's on the agenda. And so they're not allowed to say anything during citizens' comment about that item, even though because it's on the agenda?
Because it's on the agenda. It's
But we're also,
So
I appreciate
how-
what you're saying, but you're also now taking the staff and the experts that are sitting there in the field, the wastewater experts that know the pumps.
Yeah.
And they've done all the research,
Uh-huh.
and now if that's the case, are we gonna open up every purchase to citizen comment, or are we gonna rely on the expertise and the experience of the folks that we have? Police department, if we have a request to purchase police vehicles and equip them, is that something that, citizens are paying? I appreciate that, but is that something we wanna solicit citizen comment on police car purchase or the radio equipment purchase?
I think there's a difference between soliciting it and allowing the citizen to make a comment if they'd like to. I agree with Councilor Shove's consideration of citizen time in the sense that it was a 2.5-hour wait, and having sat there for 2.5 hours, I definitely understand that. I suppose my question was merely to clarify how a citizen would in fact make a comment on one of those things, whether it be a pump or an ordinance, should they want to. So.
I would say agendas are published.
So we do have folks who reach out to staff and talk with them about items that are on the agenda. That's not necessarily always brought here, though. And so.
A lot of questions, they're answered prior to, yeah.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it kind of comes down to the function of representative government, where you're the elected officials to make these decisions on behalf of the citizens. So.
One other quick thought I had as far as if they're wanting to talk about things on the agenda, could we just ask them, what is the subject of what you want to talk about? And then if they say something that relates to it, just say, hey, this sounds like something that's on the agenda, that will have to wait for it. Or if they say, hey, I don't know, whatever, there was this thing that happened in front of my house, I'm curious about it. We can say, well, that's not on the agenda, clearly. We can now talk about that, just to try to filter that out and allow them, if it's not on the agenda, to get a little bit of a tidbit of what they're wanting to talk about, and then go from there. Is that an option?
Yeah, I think we can certainly, we can certainly look at other options and look at where things are placed, and we can bring that back as a more formal
Whether it's
discussion.
early in the meeting or late in the meeting, they're not supposed to talk about anything that's on the agenda anyway.
Period, yeah.
So, asking them, trying to filter for non-agenda items so they can speak up front and allow agenda items at the back. We still can't allow agenda items at the back either.
So just one quick clarification. And we've had this happen, where somebody wants to speak on an item that's on the agenda and council has allowed that, so the mayor will check with you. And if you guys are okay with that person speaking, they have been allowed to speak. So I don't want to say that no one's ever been allowed to speak on an item that's on an agenda. The council does have the ability to allow that person to speak.
That's a good point.
But probably I would think this is probably just looking at, do we move it further up on the agenda? And so we can bring that commentary back to you on what's recommended and kind of what we see, what best practices in the state on it. There was legislation proposed that we do think will come back that would allow every item on the agenda to have a citizen comment ability. That did not, got through the House but not the Senate.
I believe so. It was covered in the legislative update,
Yeah.
and it was passed for school district.
You're right, it was, I think, school
Or
districts.
library
and
districts? I can't
something.
remember.
So we'll bring that information back with
Good.
this.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got one other comment, different topic. Strong Towns is flying me out to their budget summit in Orlando in mid-June. There's 12 people, and they invited me. They're paying it all to fly me out there, and a couple other guys. The purpose is to create a tool where anybody can take numbers from the city's financial budgeting and statements and then put that into some sort of dashboard that teases out ideas and KPIs and other things like that. So I'm going to go down there and doing that and taking our budgeting documents. So if anybody has suggestions for things that this tool they're trying to create should pull out from city finances, then let me know. And maybe we'll get to kind of guinea pig Post Falls' stuff on whatever tool they're creating and kind of see how it works. So.
Thank you.
I do have a fiscal impact model I can send you that we did a few years ago. It's just a spreadsheet, but you can see how it lays out.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay.
I had one comment. I just wanted to publicly thank Officer Jeff Casey for the bust seems like the wrong word, but that's the word that I know. Apprehension of a lot of very dangerous weapons and items. That was, what, 2 weeks ago or a week ago that he did that? And so I know that he's been working really hard and has moved his family up here and dedicated a lot of really hard work to the city of Post Falls, and so I'd just like to publicly thank him for that. And then I did have some questions about that incident, if I would be allowed to ask them to the chief. Is that okay?
You want to reach out to me after?
Yeah.
'Cause I don't know the full details of what,
Okay.
what actually transpired on that.
Okay, I'll do
But
that.
I'm happy to reach out to you.
Awesome, thank you.
Good. We do need an executive session. 5 minutes?
Who's got the chart?
less.
It's, you just
Oh,
move to enter into,
Yeah.
do you have it there? Move to enter into executive session.
Pursuant to Idaho Code, I move to enter an executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-206-1F to communicate with legal counsel for the public agency to discuss the legal ramifications of and legal options for pending litigation or controversies not yet being litigated but imminently likely to be litigated, that no decisions will be made during this session and that will last for approximately 5 minutes.
Second. Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Malloy,
Aye.
Stiglater,
Aye.
Westland,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Jove.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We'll enter executive. Call the meeting back to order. Are there any motions to come forward?
I move to authorize staff to mediate claim and/or settle as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Stigliter,
Aye.
Westland,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Are there any other motions to come forward?
Adjourn?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.